Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we love to really get into those topics that make you think, and today is no exception. We're going to be talking about genius and mental illness.
Yeah.
Possible link.
Yeah.
You've been following that Mad Genius Thesis podcast, haven't you?
I have.
Well, they just did a deep dive on a beautiful mind, Sylvia Nasar's book about John Nash.
Right.
That's where we're going to be starting today.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, talk about a fascinating case study for their whole thesis,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, John Nash's story, even beyond like the Hollywood version, is just, it's full of contradictions. This brilliant mathematician who revolutionizes economics, but then he struggles with schizophrenia.
Yeah, for decades.
Yeah.
So let's rewind for a sec and start with his early life. Bluefield, West Virginia.
Okay.
We don't have to dwell on his childhood too much,
Yeah.
but were there any moments that really kind of foreshadowed his unconventional way of thinking?
You know what? I think one of the things that really jumped out at me in Nasar's book was this detail about Nash getting a B- in arithmetic. Not because he didn't get it,
Right.
but because he was using his own like advanced methods to solve the problems.
Wow.
His sister even described him as someone who was always looking for a different way to do things.
Even as a kid.
Yeah, even as a child. And think about this. His passion for math wasn't really sparked by school. It was sparked by reading E.T. Bell's Men of Mathematics.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and that book, it kind of romanticizes mathematicians, right? It portrays them as these almost superhuman figures.
I wonder if that early exposure kind of influenced how he saw himself
Oh, for sure.
and his place in, like, this world of mathematics.
I think it's definitely possible, like almost planted a seed, you know, suggesting that mathematicians operate on a totally different level.
Yeah, and then fast forward to his time at Princeton in the late 1940s.
Okay.
And he lands in this place that's like a hotbed of intellectual activity.
Princeton, right.
Yeah, but instead of diving into those formal classes, he's drawn to that game-playing culture in the common room at Fine Hall, which is where he stumbles upon game theory.
Exactly.
But he doesn't just, like, passively learn about it.
No.
He becomes kind of obsessed with finding new solutions.
Yeah, he's pushing those boundaries.
Right, and pushing the boundaries of what was already considered, like, groundbreaking work.
By people like John von Neumann, the father of game theory.
Right.
And von Neumann himself is a fascinating figure. A total child prodigy.
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant in like a zillion different fields.
Mm-hmm.
But Nash, even as this like young, kind of arrogant student, he has this drive to go beyond what von Neumann had already done.
So he's not content to just apply the theories.
No, he wants to create something totally new.
Yeah, that brings us to his breakthrough with the bargaining problem.
Oh, yeah.
This seemingly simple question that had baffled economists for ages. How do you predict how two rational people are going to divide something that they both want?
Right. The prevailing theories at the time were all about trying to model the complexities of human behavior and psychology.
Yeah, make it make sense.
But Nash takes this totally radical approach. He focuses on the logic of the situation itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he develops this thing called an axiomatic approach.
Okay.
It's laying out a set of logical conditions that any solution to the bargaining problem should actually satisfy.
So instead of getting lost in that messiness of, like, human behavior,
Yeah.
he creates this set of rules, a framework to find a solution based on pure logic.
And the amazing thing is,
Did it work?
it worked. He proved that a unique solution actually existed within those constraints.
Wow.
And his thesis on this was incredibly concise, only 27 pages.
Oh, wow.
Even his advisor, Albert Tucker, he urged Nash to get it published like as quickly as possible.
He recognized that it was revolutionary.
Oh, absolutely. This was huge. And in mathematics, you know, elegance and simplicity are so highly valued.
Yeah.
A short, clear proof is seen as way more powerful than a long, complicated one.
So Nash wasn't just brilliant.
No.
He was brilliant in a way that resonated with the core values of his field.
Yeah, he got all.
Yeah. Okay, so
It's brilliant. He switched things up.
he's got this super short thesis.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens next?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because his work starts to have a huge impact way beyond academia.
Okay.
He moves on to MIT, then the Rand Corporation.
Right.
And all of a sudden you have game theory being applied to Cold War strategy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. What
Yeah.
happens at Rand?
So picture this. It's the early 1950s. Cold War tensions are at their peak. And you've got these brilliant minds at Rand, including Nash.
Go.
They're trying to use game theory to like model things out.
What kind of things?
Nuclear deterrence, predicting enemy behavior,
Wow.
even designing bomber formations.
So this is like way beyond the classroom.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This is like real-world consequences,
Grilled stuff.
potentially influencing military decisions with global implications.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of pressure.
Let's talk about pressure. The environment it ran was intense. It was a melting pot of all these brilliant and often eccentric minds.
Yeah.
The stakes were so high, and everyone's grappling with problems that could literally, like, change the world.
And some argue that this kind of pressure cooker environment, it could either fuel a brilliant mind
Yeah.
or fracture it.
Right, and tragically, in Nash's case,
Yeah.
it seems like that pressure might have contributed to his decline.
Because it's right around this time, right?
Yeah.
That we see the first signs of his schizophrenia.
This is where the whole Mad Genius Thesis gets really interesting. It's not just that Nash had a mental illness,
Right.
but the way his descent into schizophrenia is kind of intertwined with his brilliance.
Yeah, Nasar describes this fascination he had with patterns
Oh, yeah.
in numbers in newspapers.
Like he's trying to decode some hidden message.
Right, like the universe is speaking to him through these patterns.
And you know, those patterns, those delusions, they weren't entirely divorced from his mathematical thinking.
So it's like his mind, this mind that was capable of such extraordinary logical leaps,
Right.
is now misfiring.
Yeah. Creating these really elaborate but ultimately false connections.
That's so sad. It's heartbreaking to read about his decline.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the paranoia, the delusions of grandeur, even the arrest for indecent exposure.
It's a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance. And it must have been just devastating for those who knew him to witness this transformation.
I keep coming back to the question that the Mad Genius Thesis podcast poses.
Okay.
Was this breakdown in some strange way connected to his genius?
That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, could the same mental processes that allowed him to see those patterns, to make those connections that other people missed, could they have also made him more susceptible to this kind of illness?
It's so difficult to say for sure.
Yeah.
It might even be impossible.
Right.
But Nash's story is definitely a compelling case study for both sides of the argument. Okay, well, let's talk about his recovery then.
Okay.
Because that's another aspect of his story that kind of challenges that typical mad genius narrative.
How so?
Well, it wasn't this sudden miraculous cure, was it?
No, not at all.
It was this long, slow process.
Yeah.
And even then, he still had to live with those effects of his illness.
It's really remarkable because his recovery, it wasn't about finding some way to cure his schizophrenia.
It was about learning to live with it.
Exactly. It was about finding a way to manage it, to carve out a space for his mathematical thinking.
Even amidst all the chaos.
Yeah, even amidst the chaos of his illness.
That speaks to his resilience, for sure.
Definitely.
But also to the support that he received.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly from his wife, Alicia.
Alicia plays such a key role.
Yeah. Nasar describes how she was just steadfast in her support.
Yeah.
Even when other people urged her to commit him.
To an institution permanently.
Right. Like she never gave up on him.
She becomes his advocate, his protector, and in a sense, his anchor to reality.
There's this powerful anecdote in the book.
Okay.
About Nash attending a conference in Europe. He's still struggling with his illness at this point.
Yeah.
But he's drawn to that intellectual stimulation of being back in the world of mathematics.
It calls to him.
It does. And it's there that he reconnects with this young mathematician.
Okay.
Named Louis Narenberg.
Oh, yeah.
And Narenberg later said that he saw these glimpses of the old Nash.
Really?
In those conversations.
Wow.
This flicker of brilliance.
It hadn't been extinguished by the illness?
It's as if those moments of connection, of intellectual engagement, were like a lifeline for him.
Yeah.
Helping him to reclaim that part of himself that had been lost.
It's beautiful.
It makes you wonder how much of his recovery was due to his resilience and how much was that support system, you know. It seems like that combination of both allowed him to navigate this illness and still, you know, contribute to the world of mathematics.
It really does challenge this romanticized idea of the solitary genius struggling in isolation.
Yeah.
You know, Nash's story shows us how important community is, having people who believe in you even when you struggle to believe in yourself.
And nowhere is that more apparent than his return to Princeton.
Oh, Princeton.
He goes back to that very place where his breakdown was so public, so disruptive.
Right.
And at first he was like a ghost. Haunting those halls of Fine Hall.
Wow.
Scribbling equations on blackboards, muttering to himself.
They even called him the Phantom.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a real testament to the power of acceptance that the Princeton community embraced him.
Yeah, over time.
Yeah, they could have shut him out,
Yeah.
dismissed him as, a relic of the past.
Totally.
But instead they create this space for him.
Yeah, they let him be himself.
Eccentricities and all.
And it's within that space that he starts to re-engage with mathematics.
Not in this grand splashy way, but slowly, organically.
He starts attending seminars, engaging in discussions with students, offering these flashes of insight that reminded everyone of the brilliance that was still there.
So that brilliance never left.
No, it was still there.
It's fascinating how his creative process seems to have persisted.
Even through the worst of his illness.
Nasar describes those periods where he'd disappear for weeks,
Yeah.
Lost in his own world, and then he'd come back with this renewed intensity for mathematical exploration.
It's like those periods of withdrawal were almost incubating new ideas.
Yeah, new connections.
It really challenges that idea that creativity needs a stable, well-ordered mind.
Right. Like in Nash's case.
Yeah.
It seems like the chaos of his illness might have in some ways fueled his creative process.
That's a really interesting thought.
It is.
And it kind of brings us back to the central question of that Mad Genius Thesis.
The link.
Yeah, that link between mental illness and creativity. Is it a causal relationship? Is it just a correlation, or is it purely coincidence?
It's the question that keeps coming up.
It is.
I don't think we have an easy answer.
No.
But Nash's story definitely adds another layer to this whole debate.
For sure.
And then, of course, there's the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
It's almost like the ultimate validation.
Totally.
Not just of his work.
But of his whole journey.
The Nobel Committee recognized that his contributions to game theory had revolutionized economics and beyond.
Absolutely. And I think the timing is really significant, too. It came after decades of struggle.
Yeah.
After he had found a way to live with his illness, after he had been welcomed back into that mathematical community.
It's like this amazing culmination of a lifetime of brilliance, resilience, and ultimately redemption.
And I think it sends a powerful message about the human capacity for both extraordinary achievement and incredible vulnerability.
Yeah, Nash's story reminds us that genius doesn't exist in a vacuum,
Right.
It's shaped by personal experiences, by relationships, by the communities that we're a part of.
For sure.
We've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about his early brilliance, his groundbreaking work in game theory, his descent into schizophrenia, his remarkable recovery, and then ultimately his redemption.
Yeah, it's a wild ride.
And I think it's safe to say that his life story, while tragic in some ways, also offers a message of hope and resilience.
Definitely. And it challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about genius,
Yeah.
about the relationship between creativity and mental illness, and how important it is to create environments where all minds can thrive, even the most unconventional ones.
Absolutely. Well, if you're interested in exploring this topic further, I highly recommend checking out A Beautiful Mind by Sylvia Nasar.
Yes.
Of course, that Mad Genius Thesis Podcast. Both offer really fascinating insights into the complexities of the human mind and just the enduring power of the human spirit.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of John Nash.
We hope you enjoyed the journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, even in the face of challenges, the human spirit can find moments of beauty and triumph.